Welcome to an AFN Pacific special, a conversation with General Ray Odierno. I'm Sergeant Andrew Branstad, and I'm joined by a special panel of guests representing the total Army family, from enlisted officers as well as family members and Department of Defense civilians. Sir, first of all, I'd like to welcome you to Korea. How's your trip been so far? I know you had a chance to just finish up a tour of Camp Humphreys. How are things looking?
Great. Well, thank you first for having me, and it's great to be able the opportunity to visit our soldiers and families and leaders over here in Korea. A couple things. One is I had the opportunity to meet the new chief of the Korean Army. He's relatively new, so it was important for me to meet with him. I went down to his headquarters. We've known each other from before, but it was good to reestablish that relationship because, you know, we have such close ties. Then we had an opportunity to go down and see Camp Humphreys. It was amazing to see the amount of construction that is going on down at Camp Humphreys and how modern it will be in the end. This is a time of transition, and Camp Humphreys is a great example of the transition that we're seeing across Korea. Then I had the opportunity to visit with some of the leadership of the units we've just started to rotate over here. That's a key concept that we could execute in the future, so I wanted to have some lessons learned. And so I had the opportunity to talk to the leadership, and I was very pleased with how that's gone. And I think that reinforces our commitment here on the peninsula, so I'm very pleased with how that went.
My first question for you, sir, for soldiers stationed here in Korea, the threat of North Korea is there. We live and work in the shadow of that at all times. It's one of the most dangerous and repressive regimes in the world. Certainly it's been in the news a lot. What is your advice to soldiers stationed here as far as how they can remain Army strong in the face of uncertainty? Well,
you have to understand that the word is uncertainty, and it really has to do with you have to be ready every day. And it's about sustaining a discipline in every task that you do, your ability to train and be ready at all times, understanding the situation, continuing to work and ensure that we are developing the best capabilities within our units that are here. And also, it's mostly important to be really good partners with the Republic of Korean partners. So what you're doing is laying the framework for the entire United States and our relationship with the Republic of Korea.
Well, sir, we're joined by a great group today, and I'd like to throw some of these questions to them and give them the opportunity to talk with you as well. Sergeant Martin, what are your thoughts on what I just spoke about, tensions in North Korea and living and working in this environment?
Well, I think it boils down to readiness, and I think that we are well aware that we have to be ready to fight tonight at any moment, and we need to, instead of looking at the uncertainty or the threat as something that's negative, we can look at it as something as a leadership tool, as something that motivates us. So then that way we can train harder, take our training more seriously, so that way we can look at the real world mission. And we have the opportunity to see that every single day by being stationed over here. And simultaneously, we have to be flexible, soldiers and leaders, because we have a humanitarian and a civilian mission that if anything were to kick off, that we have to actually pay attention to and realize that we might not always be doing the current job that we hold right now, that we can be called upon to do anything over here. So really flexibility has the biggest role, I think, for us over here, just being ready to do whatever, whenever we need to be doing it.
Well, I couldn't say it any better. I think I completely with what Sergeant Martin said. You know, she's a chemical biological specialist, and this is probably one of the true theaters where you live that every single day. Mm-hmm. And you know, what you have to do to be prepared in a real world environment is quite significant. I think that brings home how important our training is. And you're right, you know, I've learned over my many years of service and having served in many different combat situations that adaptability and flexibility is our strength. That's the strength of our Army, the adaptability and flexibility of our leaders and our soldiers. So you're exactly right, and your readiness and your training allows you and gives you confidence to adapt and be flexible, and so it's really important.
You know, and as a DA civilian too, we, you know, some of us will go and some of us will stay. You know, in my job, I'll stay here, and so you know, we try to stay prepared. And I hope that we, you know, this last exercise went pretty well for the spouses and for the civilians on our parts. And I hope that we are still included in all the training that the Army does and doesn't forget about the civilians.
Yeah. Well, you know, the way we're set up is, you know, we're intertwined. And, you know, for us to be successful, we need our Department of the Army civilians, and especially in the area you're in
Right.
behavioral health and other things. And those are things we will constantly need as no matter what we do. And so it's important. You're a key piece of building the resiliency and readiness of our formations.
Sir, today's Army is certainly no stranger to deployments, and sometimes downrange, living in close quarters like that, the lines can become blurred between junior and senior, between enlisted and officer. Army has strict policies about fraternization, of course, but what would you, if you could share your insight on how to keep things professional?
Well, I mean, it's fundamental to everything that we do. We're given, as leaders, whether it's non-commissioned officers, or civilians, when you're a leader of an organization, a section of some sort, you have a responsibility. And your responsibility is to maintain standards and discipline within your element, whatever that might be. And the way, and because of the things that we ask our soldiers to do, which can be life and death in some ways, it's important for us to maintain that leader-to-led discipline. And so that's why, you know, fraternization is such an important part of this, because the lines become blurred. And when the lines become blurred, does that mean you're not going to be able to provide the orders and guidance and leadership when it's most needed?
Captain Kim, as a company commander, what were your experiences while deployed?
When I have seen it occur, it occurs generally within a relationship that doesn't involve a chain of command. An officer in one unit, an NCO in another, or something similar, sir. Do you have any advice for leaders in those situations who know what the right answer is, but are tempted to cross that line, to not do so and keep it professional?
Well, you know, the problem is there's lots of difficult areas when you talk about fraternization and other issues as well, but it comes down to, you know, character. We have rules and regulations. And we adjust those rules and regulations, but they're there for a reason. And so our specific rules forbid that relationship. So you have to make a decision. You have to understand that if that relationship is something you want to carry forward, then you no longer can be in the position of responsibility that you're in. That's what I call character. You have to have the character and moral courage to step forward. But you know, rules and standards sometimes are frustrating, but we have them because they create a level of discipline that is necessary for the missions that we have to accomplish.
So, Martin, from your perspective, what are the concerns of junior service members when it comes to fraternization?
I think the biggest thing for my soldiers and for my peers is really a re-education as to what fraternization even means, what the definition is, because it is vague. It is up to one person's interpretation versus the other. So a lot of times I've heard that it's difficult for our soldiers to know what the left and right boundaries are, to really instinctively know what is right, when a lot of us, all we know is the Middle East. All we know is deployments or even being stationed over here. So from the very get-go, our perspective is skewed, and there isn't a checklist, so to speak, of what we can and cannot do, or what right is or what right isn't. So probably a more black and white definition would be
you know, it's interesting you say this. I mean, about maybe a month ago or so, I asked them to come and talk to me about what our fraternization policies are and what they look like. And they are a bit confusing. And so I think it's up to us to make it a bit more easier for everyone to understand, so they understand what the right and left limits are. Because to me, that's the most important thing. You got to provide right and left limits, and we want everybody to be able to operate within those right and left limits. But when they're blurred, it's very difficult. So actually, I'm going to take on what you just said. I think it's an important point, and I think we need to really better define what it is.
Sir, I've heard it said that soldiers work hard and sometimes play hard as well. What are your thoughts on alcohol use in the Army, and particularly underage drinking?
I worry about abuse of anything, whether it be alcohol, whether it be drugs, whether it be abuse of power. I mean, abuse is a bad term. And so what we have to do about alcohol, it really is about abuse. And what it does is it really, when you have abuse of a substance, it starts to whittle away at your own discipline. Again, I go back to there's rules for a reason, and so we expect people to follow the rules. That's part of who we are. And underage drinking has been a problem forever. This is not a new problem. I mean, this has been a problem from when I was a young man. There was a problem with underage drinking, but even then, there were repercussions if you break the law, and you got to understand that. What I worry about is with alcohol and drug abuse, it leads to many other problems. It leads to problems of sexual assault. It leads to problems of indiscipline. So it is something that we want to be able to control. It's something that each individual is responsible to ensure that they are operating within the rules that are set. But I would take it. Underage drinking is something we obviously do not want. But it's about drinking as a whole. We have to make sure we understand it. Even if you're of age, it's got to be in moderation, because when it's in excess, lots of bad things begin to happen. And so everybody has to understand that you become vulnerable when you do something in excess, and then that creates vulnerabilities for others.
Well, sir, that dovetails, you mentioned sexual assault, and I want to ask you about sexual assault and harassment and the prevention of that. What would you say to reassure a parent that the Army and that 8th Army is doing everything possible to protect their sons, their daughters here in Korea? What more do you think needs to be done?
Well, first, but not only here in Korea, but all over the Army, we take this problem very seriously. This is about providing a culture where every individual has the opportunity to succeed, and that's creating an environment where they feel comfortable, where they don't feel threatened. And so we have a program that talks about prevention. We have executed a training program that is in every part of our institutions, in all of our operational units, and we continue to adjust that and make it better. We have people from all the states coming to our investigation training program and our forensics labs, because we probably have the best training program and forensic labs in the United States. So we got to hold people accountable. If they are involved in a sexual assault or sexual harassment, we will hold them accountable in the appropriate way. But the other thing I really want everybody to know is we're really stepping up advocacy. The most important thing for us is that anybody who's sexually harassed or assaulted believes there's an advocate there for them, and that they believe that the chain of command will provide them the support necessary, and that we have outside agencies that will provide them the support. And we're improving that. We still have a lot of work to do. And finally, we have to constantly assess what we're doing, because we have to constantly change and adjust. We have a long way to go with this problem. Women are playing a much bigger role. We're going to have more women in the military. So it's important for us that we understand this issue of sexual assault, sexual harassment. We eliminate it from our culture. But it's not just a female-male problem. It's also a male-on-male and a female-on-female issue. And we got to make sure that everybody understands that we won't tolerate that.
Mrs. Archer, as a victim advocate, I'm curious to hear your thoughts and questions.
Well, I'm like Ray. This is my passion. This job just found me, but we've really taken on. I really love what I do, for the fact that we get out there and just like you like to come and visit soldiers and hear what's going on. We go out there and we hear what they're saying. We've come to realize that we can't change culture, but we can lead culture, to a change. And with that being from the private, who teaches us, what we need to teach him to make him understand, or to the leader, what we can get to with advocacy. It's very important that a leader understand what a victim's going through, whether it be male, female. They're going through something. They didn't ask for what happened to them, and for them to understand that there's support now, and we're getting leaders and everybody following suit with how we will will, you know, protect the victim and how we will, you know, prosecute, and there will be no tolerance whatsoever in our ranks. You know, we will wipe this out. I think, you know, it's a problem in society as a whole, and I think they've always looked to the Army or other organizations to kind of take the lead, and I think that this SHARP program is the best thing the Army has come up with, and I think eventually we will stomp out sexual assault. I mean, it's going to be, you know, one day at a time, but we will do it.
We will. It's going to take time. You know, we get soldiers come from all different parts of our society. They come from different parts of the country. They come from different religions, different ethnic backgrounds. They come from different financial backgrounds. They come from different family situations. So that's why it's important when we get them in that they understand what our culture is, and we have to constantly reinforce this as we go. So Martin, what do you think as you've gone through this? What do you run into? What are some of the things you think we need to do?
I think how the demographic that we break our soldiers up into when we try to educate them about SHARP or what it means, what constitutes right or wrong, needs to maybe be looked at. Instead of looking at SHARP as like an umbrella, and this is the definition, this is restricted, unrestricted, things of that nature, maybe more small group training, so that way if you have maybe E4 and below females, then you can direct training specifically towards that demographic and maybe hit home with them a little bit more deeply. And potentially, I mean, with all the work that you've been doing and, you know, women like you, erasing the stigma of this issue, I think is something that's going to help change and push that culture to change. So then that way people feel comfortable coming to authorities, to victim advocates, their chain of command, medical resources, anything like that. So they feel like they can share their story with someone without a negative stigma on them. Will absolutely help share those personal experiences and really relate to other soldiers.
Well, you know, what I want to do is reverse the stigma. The stigma should be on the one who conducts the assault.
Right. Should be on
that's where the stigma should be, and that's what we have to change as we go forward. And you know, I couldn't agree more with your small unit. You know, I often talk about when I bring all the leaders together in the Army and we talk about this subject. The thing I talk about is we'll be successful that when I go to units and I'm seeing platoons sitting down and have interactive discussions about sexual assault. That's when we're successful. They're not using PowerPoint slides. They're not talking about policies. They're there talking about the issues that affect them personally. Because, you know, for example, here in Korea is a different environment than if you're in Fort Bragg or Fort Hood or Fort Lewis. And so you got to be talking about it together. What are the issues, and you know, and what are different views about this, and what is wrong, and what's not acceptable, and that peer-to-peer discussion about this is how we're going to solve this, and also our junior leaders being involved. And so, you know, Captain Kim, I'd like to hear from you as a company commander. You know, what do you see as some of the challenges, and how do you see the best way to?
Sir, I actually agree with what Sergeant Martin said. I'm sure you've given many safety briefs and PowerPoint briefs regarding SHARP and other things. A lot of times soldiers have a tendency to kind of drone out during those longer, large groups meetings. So I think the small group way is the way forward. The question I would have for you, sir, is during those small group sessions, is there anything that you could recommend that leaders try to hone in on so that their soldiers remember when they are out there and in the situation where sexual assault or sexual harassment could occur?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is the best way is vignettes, you know, and frankly, you know, we have, you know, at the Department of the Army, we can produce all these vignettes, but the best way to do it is to take local vignettes. You know, a situation that could happen here in Yongsan or at Camp Humphreys, and talk through that and say, you know, this is kind of what we believe the right thing to do is, and this is the wrong thing to do, and this is, and then you know, the company commander can talk about if there's error of the platoon leader, and this is the implications if this happens. If this happens, and you know, we're you know, and you're a prosecutor and you're found guilty, here's what's going to happen. I also think we should focus on our profession and what it means about being a soldier, about you know, the Army core values. You know, we talk about this all the time, that we'll never leave a fallen comrade. Well, this is part. I mean, they're our fellow soldiers, We should be taking care of each other all the time. And to me, that's the point we need to make. We got to invest that. We're a team, and we all are doing a very special job for our country. And it's important for us to understand that we should be taking care of each other no matter what. And that's the mentality. And we should not tolerate anybody who we know is a predator. And we shouldn't tolerate it. We should never tolerate it, no matter what rank it is, no matter who it is. We cannot tolerate those who are being predators. And it takes moral courage to step forward, and we have to have that inner moral courage. That's the way we're going to solve this problem.
Sir, I've heard a lot of excitement about the Army's focus on the Pacific. I want to ask you, as the senior officer for the U.S. Army, what do you see in the future for the Army in the Pacific and in Korea?
The Asia-Pacific region is a vital region for the United States. This is one where we want to maintain a level of stability, because so much of our future economic development for our country is in the Pacific region. Whether it be trading with China, whether it be trading with Korea, whether it be trading with Japan, whether it be developing relationships with up-and-coming nations, Vietnam, and big countries like Indonesia. This is about the vitality of the United States. And so it's important that we protect and establish stability. What many people don't realize is the Army has about 80,000 soldiers assigned to Pacific Command. That's the largest, I think, among any services, and it's a huge commitment by us. And that's because we understand the importance. Now, what has happened over the last 10 years is we had a lot of soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan from the Pacific region. Well, we've stopped that. We're now making sure we focus here. And obviously, Korea is a central piece of this Asia-Pacific strategy, this long-term relationship we have with the Republic of Korea. Is very, very important. And so the soldiers that are here on the peninsula specifically play a very important role, not only in what we already talk about as being ready and the combat capability they bring, but also about developing relationships with our strong partner, the Republic of Korea. And every soldier represents that. So for me, it's pretty exciting. We're going to continue to do many exercises. We just did an airborne exercise in Thailand, where we had a unit jump, a combined jump between the Thai and U.S. Army into Thailand. We just had an exchange with Chinese on humanitarian assistance in Hawaii. We're having the day-to-day interactions here. I believe we'll start doing joint training at the National Training Center with some of the Koreans. We could do some joint training. We always do joint training here in Korea. So these are exciting times. We're going to have an opportunity to do many, many different things with many of our partners. And the wave of the future is going to be multinational exercises and training. So we can continue to make sure that we shape this region so we can maintain our vitality, our economic vitality here.
Sir, I know that leadership development is a critical issue to you. What can you say about the challenges we face as leaders as we look for broadening opportunities and whether or not to extend our time with the Army?
Yeah. One of the advantages I believe we've had in all of the combat operations we've done and in all the areas we're in is that we have really good leaders. We clearly have the best non-commissioned officer corps of anybody in the world. Everybody knows it. They all want to have a non-commissioned officer corps like we do. It's recognized by everyone. We want to sustain that. We have an officer corps that is adaptable and flexible, so we got to do that. But we touched on it earlier. The world is becoming more complex by the minute. And a lot of that is caused by how quickly information now moves. I mean, you just think about where it's come in the last 10 years. It's incredible. So people know more. That will change conflict as we know it in the future because of the amount of information and how fast that people understand it. So we need, I believe, and the cause will be then the decentralized decision making. So what I mean by that is decisions can be made at lower and lower levels. So we got to make sure we're preparing our leaders to do critical thinking, that they understand that they understand the importance of being adaptable and flexible. And so we are adjusting our training programs across the board. In order to start doing this. It'll take us 2 to 3 years to get them at place, but we're working very hard to ensure that we do this. And then you know, and then, you know, finally, we want to give people, we believe in order to round them out, because military operations are never going to be just military operations alone. So we want to give our soldiers opportunities to work in other places. So we want them not only to be tactically proficient, which is what we want them to be first, but then start to, as they get more senior in rank, you know, senior non-commissioned officers and senior officers, where they start to experience many other things, like working at higher level headquarters, at working at different parts of the country, at different countries, at working in the State Department or other places, so you understand what they're doing. So when we have to actually execute these complex operations, you have some experience in it. So for me, I think it's an exciting time to be a leader, because I think you're going to find there's going to be opportunities that are very different than what we've experienced over the last 10 or 12 years, which is basically you go to Iraq or Afghanistan and you come back. We're going to have opportunities that allow you to go many different places now. I think it's pretty exciting.
Captain Kim, what do you see as the challenges to building good leaders in the Army?
Sir, I agree with you. I think the Army does a great job at building leaders. I have read, however, some articles by former officers that claim that the Army, though good at building leaders, bleeds talent through a outdated, overly centralized human resource management system that focuses more on prioritizing time and service, time and grade, more so than the performance and potential of officers. I was wondering what your thoughts were on that, and if the Army was taking any actions regarding that issue, sir.
I think part of the issue here is during the 2000s, when we were growing the Army, we reduced rate, we speeded up promotion. Promotion rates were much higher than the norms. So I think that skewed people's thinking. So what we're doing is, there's a couple things. Is first, we're adding competition back into the force. So, you know, for example, selection rates are going to be much tighter. So it's going to be very competitive. It's going to require, going to school is going to be, we want you to go to school on time, not delayed. You'll have to go to school to be promoted. It's also about understanding about this broadening concept as well, and understanding you have to be able to do and work more. You know, all systems of personnel management in a large institution like the Army, there's probably places where there's some flaws. But our system does a very good job of sorting through that. What I want to make sure we have is competition. That, to me, is the most important thing. If you want to maintain an edge, you have to have competition. And so we are putting competition back into the system in order to do this. And for me, you know, what you're going to see is you're going to, as a leader, you're going to have to show that you're versatile. That's really going to be the key to the future. And it'll take us some time to shift to that, because we realize that our requirement was for everybody to go to combat over the last 10 or 12 years. Well, now that as we come out of that, it's key that we sustain our versatility. And I want to see people who are versatile and can operate across very many spectrums. And then we got to look at how we do talent management. Number one is, I expect all, you know, platoon sergeants, first sergeants, sergeant majors to be involved in leader development and to talk to their NCOs and to kind of make sure they're counseling them and helping them as they think about what they want to do with their career. And I expect the same thing with battalion commanders and brigade commanders with their officers. That's a key part of this. And then we're putting in a new OER, and we're getting ready to look at a new NCOER. And on this OER, we're starting to talk about, okay, where do you think this individual's talents are? How do they match to the individual? And that will help us in managing our talent a bit better as well.
Yes, sir.
I was just going to ask about the budget cuts, because when I hear you say this, I have two soldiers in my office that are sergeants and were routed here without going to school because the budget. You know, so how are we going to now? Will that hurt their promotion?
No, it won't. So, you know, last year was a very specific problem
Okay.
with the budget because of many reasons.
Right.
Some was underfunded to do our job in Afghanistan, some other things. But let me address this issue because it's an important one. As the budget goes down, the Secretary of Defense made an announcement today, actually, about the Army will continue to get smaller. The reason we're getting small, we could keep a larger Army, but it wouldn't allow us to do the training and readiness necessary. So we made a fundamental decision that the Army that we keep is going to be funded in the right way so people get the right training, that they have the right readiness, that they have the best system. So we're going to have an Army that might be smaller, but it's going to have the highest level of training, the highest level of readiness, and we're going to continue to modernize it. And I think that's the most important thing.
So you've spoken a little bit about the future. I think we touched on this a bit. I'd like to ask you, as Chief of Staff, what are your goals and your priorities for the Army?
Yeah, so, I mean, there's a couple of things. So as I look out to the future, you know, what does the Army have to be able to do? Well, there's a couple key components. Is that, you know, we're highly trained, all volunteer force is number one. The Army is uniquely organized, different than any other service that provides a wide range of capabilities. And so, you know, from being able to do humanitarian assistance all the way up to be conducting high-end combat operations. And we have to keep that niche, that we have to have that ability, because that we can range across that entire spectrum to meet the requirements of our national security strategy. We have to be, you know, we are an integral part of the joint force, and we have to go back to what I call an expeditionary mindset. We have to start thinking about, you know, how do we go into places that are remote, that don't have a lot of infrastructure, and that we go in starting very small. You know, maybe it's 150 people that go in, maybe it's 300 that go in, and then we expand from there. And so we have to have that mindset that we're going to have to be able to go at a moment's notice. And we have to make ourselves more efficient. We have to make ourselves a bit smaller. That makes it easier for us to get there more quickly. So the Army's mission is to support all our combatant commanders to do three things: prevent conflict, and you do that by deterrence. And you deter somebody by having a capability and capacity that deters them. Secondly, you got to shape the environment. You got to shape the environment through engagement, through building partner capacity, through doing multilateral training with other people, and setting and providing ability to set a theater. So if we have to conduct operations in the future, we can. And the last is win. If asked to, we have to have the ability to win and win decisively. So that's what we're focusing on in the future. And I have 5 priorities that I'm focused on. One is training leaders to operate in a complex environment. Number 1, leader development. Number 1 priority. Second is that we'll be globally responsive and being able to respond very quickly around the world, and then be regionally engaged. One of the things that I think we really have to work on is we become regional experts, whether it be here in Korea, in the rest of the Pacific, whether it be in Africa, whether it be in the Middle East, whether it be working with our NATO allies in Europe, whether it be in South America. We have to understand the underpinnings of the social and economic aspects that's required of us. So that's important. So we're going to align units so they have this. You could have the opportunity to go to many different places and become aware of those. Third is ready. We got to be ready, and we have to modernize. Fourth priority is the Army profession. That's who we are. The Army profession is who we are, and we can't ever walk away from that. You know, we stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. Men and women have sacrificed and made people proud of this uniform, all the way back to the Revolutionary War, all the way till today. And we have to ensure that we have that responsibility to take that forward. And for me, the underpinnings of the professional Army is competence. Soldiers that are competent, are committed, and have high character. And then the last priority is maintaining the premier all-volunteer Army. So those are our priorities as we go forward.
So the various numerous family programs that the Army offers are one of the ways that help families deal with hard times and give them some resilience in that. What are your feeling about the importance of these programs with resiliency?
Well, yeah. I mean, first, it's about. So I always talk about, you know, the strength of our soldiers is their families. And we can never forget the role that our families play. So we have to have programs in place that allow our soldiers and our families together to do the things we're going to ask them to do. And it's very important. And so we're continuing to invest heavily in those programs. But we have to remember that in the 2000s, because of wartime budgets, we had more dollars. So what we have to do is pick the right programs. And you know, what I want is feedback from all of the installations to tell me, what are the programs that are most effective? What are the ones that we want to invest in? What are the ones that maybe we shouldn't invest in? Because we'll have to make some choices. But the one thing I will say is that we are investing this year over $1 billion in family programs in the Army. So we are not walking away from our programs, whether it be counseling programs, whether it be MWR programs. The one lesson that I've learned over this last 10 years is the importance of resiliency of our soldiers, and resiliency of our families. And this is about, and there's several keys to this, but really the three that I focus on is physical readiness, which is people who take care of themselves through good nutrition, good weight, workout. They're more resilient. And then we have mental resiliency, and we try to help people to understand how do you cope with stress, because our job is full of stress that we do. And so it's how you do that. And then if it's something that you believe in, it's spiritual fitness, and it has to do with, you know, we have to make available to those who want to, that they have the opportunity to exercise whatever religious activity that they're comfortable with. And so with those three pillars, we build physical, mental toughness, and resiliency, and it's long-term programs that will help us do that, and we have to really focus on those as we go forward. So when we ask our soldiers to deploy, and they have to have separation, and they incur family hardships, that both their families and our soldiers are prepared. So this is very important for us as we go forward.
Zarcha, I know you might have an angle on this.
Well, I kind of agree that we've kind of, since we had more money, we did kind of spread out to a lot of different departments. I think we can consolidate a lot of them. I like that Humphreys, our Family Resiliency Center there, I'd like to see more of those. We haven't gotten to use that yet. I mean, we go down there, but I've been down there lots of times. But you know, and eventually we'll move down there. But I think we could use those in the States too. You know, in some of the bigger, like Fort Hood, Fort Bragg. I know they've tried other things like that, similar, but then they didn't really pan out. But I think this actually would be useful.
Yeah, I think you'll see that. So Fort Lewis has built a resiliency center. It's really quite impressive. But and Fort Hood and Fort Bragg, they're starting to do this, and they're putting resiliency campuses together where people can go to. So we're really working on this now. Now, we'll have to continue to adjust it and adapt it.
Right.
But we're starting to see it. I agree with you. I think it's an important concept, and we have to look at how we're going to do that throughout the Army.
And one other concern I have too, though, is like it goes to, so I guess this kind of ties in here, and goes with being over here in Korea, with it being 2 years more, bringing more families here, because that's Humphreys is set up for more families. The job availability for spouses. I know we have the priority placement, but it hasn't been really useful here. I don't know if there's something else that they're going to look at, because a lot of us, you know, which it doesn't necessarily, I got a job for one thing, so it didn't affect me as much. But you know, a lot of us come over here and don't want to give up our careers. And if my husband had just been deployed, I would be choosing another separation versus staying home.
Yeah. This is a problem not only in Korea, it's a problem throughout our Army, actually.
Right.
We're really trying to adjust, because, you know, in the last 30 years, you know, since I first came in the Army, it's changed a lot in terms of spouses are professionals too. And you know, they want to work, they want to kind of have, I mean, they're willing to sacrifice, but they want to have the ability to have some level of career. So we're actually working very hard with a program that helps spouses. We're working with major corporations that help spouses as they move to gain jobs. Now, here in Korea is a very different problem.
Yeah.
And we do give priority hiring. The problem is there's a limit to the number of jobs that we have. So we just have to keep looking at it and figuring out, how can we make that better? Because, in some cases, when we want people to be here for 2 or 3 years, they want to bring their families with them. And I'm an advocate. I like to see the family together. We've had enough deployments that are forced based on operational reasons. We want to be able to try to keep families together as much as we can, because I believe that's important in resiliency. That's important in keeping the family unit together. So it's something we have to constantly work, and it is an issue that we understand that we have to continue to work through. We have not solved it yet by any means.
Sir, I had a question actually, since we're kind of circling about resiliency. Yeah. Is the Army maybe going towards the direction of picking someone's civilian education or prior work experience, taking those personnel and putting them in like special duty assignments or special positions based on that experience versus maybe just by virtue of rank? Right.
Yeah, so when it comes to where we want to go, let me take SARCs, for example. We just now have stood up an Army school, because up until now we've kind of decentralized the training. We think it's so important that we got to centralize it. So we are trying to set standards and then the educational requirements in order to fill these positions. And that takes time. We got to catch up, because we've had some policy that we want to have these people, and now now we're catching up in how we get them trained and certified to do the job. So it is essential to do that, and it should be based on capabilities, not necessarily rank. We have not put rank structure on any of this, but we have to constantly continue to work this issue with our commanders in the field to make sure they understand that it's about having the right people there. In some of these, it's really about the right background, the right personalities, and other things to do these kind of jobs. It can't be just, you're a master sergeant, so we're going to put you in there. That's not how we want them to do this. So we're continuing to work that. My guess is it's happened initially because we've had this rush to try to, put some new policies in place. But over time, we've got to fix this problem, and we've got to come up with a process to do that.
Now, have we started looking at, with us, we spent a lot of manpower and a lot of months now hand-picking our VAs for collateral duty, and from interviews from the company commander, then to the brigade commander, and so, going through background checks and picking the right person. And so when they leave here, and I'm sure they're doing it in the States too, everywhere, will they be a VA? Will they will that just fall off?
Well, I think what will happen is they'll have, what we're looking at is, do we give them a designator?
Right.
To let people know they've done this. If you have somebody who has done that and they want to continue to do that, you certainly want the gaining command to know that as we go forward.
Sir, here in the 8th Army, in addition to focusing on the SHARP program, there's a great emphasis on physical readiness training, specifically functional fitness, in order to not only enhance the soldier's combat effectiveness, but his resiliency as well. I know you've seen the super gym down at Humphreys, and all the money that we're putting into building facilities. Is the Army taking a look at amending the Army physical fitness test to influence those soldiers to use those facilities?
When I first became the chief about almost 2 years ago, the first thing they put in front of me was a new physical fitness test, which I rejected because I didn't believe it measured anything that we expected to be measured. And what we found out over 10 years of war, that the current PT test we have, sit-ups, push-ups, 2-mile run, does not build the physical fitness that we think is necessary for us to have in combat. So what we're doing is we're reviewing that now. Where I'm at now, in a very general sense, is that we need to have a general PT test that is kind of, okay, here's a test that everybody has to pass, and maybe it is sit-ups, push-ups, 2-mile run. But then there's a functional test depending on your MOS. And that's directed especially at your MOS that you have to be able to do.
So along this vein, I know with the integration of women into the combat arms, the changing of the physical fitness standards to MOS-specific standards is one thing that will help us integrate women and enhance the abilities of organizations down to, and for me, the importance is the rifle team level. The fire team level. What other initiatives has the Army taken to ensure that when we integrate women, we do so in a positive manner, in a manner that enhances the conflict?
So we're doing extensive studies on this. So everybody understands, Secretary of Defense signed in 2012. He lifted the ban on women's service. So there is no more ban on women serving in any of the MOSs that we have. But part of that guidance was he gave all the services until third quarter of fiscal year 15 to report back to him on how we're going to implement this, and are we going to ask for any exceptions. So we have, since that time, we have begun a significant amount of analysis. So there's several things we're doing. We're doing a physical demand study that's being done by the Army Research Institute and many other outside organizations, where we're taking a look at what are the physical standards for every MOS. We're also validating the performance standards that we're establishing. So we're going through a very detailed process to do this. And then we're conducting a gender integration study on, as we begin to integrate women into these MOSs, what's the best way to do that? Because we want to set them up for success. And one of the key pieces, you can't just start putting privates, and you're going to have some level of leaders of the same gender in there. So we have to figure out, so we're working on how do we do that. And so we're conducting a huge study to tell us what's the best way to do this and how we'll do this. And then, so, because the major thing is we want to integrate women so they succeed. In my opinion, this is happening. This is going to happen. I believe that where we're headed down is that as we look at the demographics of people who want to serve, it's going to become necessary to utilize every demographic the best we can. And so there are some women who want to do this, and I think if they meet all the standards, and we're not going to lower standards. Women don't want us to lower standards. Nobody wants us to lower standards. We're going to have consistent standards that everyone will have to meet in order to operate in that job, and that's what we're doing extensive studies on now. So I expect that over the next year or so, we will start to be publishing these standards, and we'll run some pilots and other things as we go forward. For me, this is a very important project that we're doing, and I'm comfortable with how we're doing it right now.
Sir, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Well, I would just say first, not only in Korea, but really all over the Army, that, you know, everybody knows we have the best Army in the world. We have an Army that everyone is jealous of and they want to emulate. And that's not going to change. Yes, we're going to downsize. Yes, the Army's going to get smaller, but it's going to be the best Army in the world still. And we're going to have an Army that continues to be busy, that will be on the cutting edge. And we need good leaders and soldiers in order to get us there. And I know that we are an Army today that has more combat experience than we've ever had. And that gives us a leg up as we move forward. So I'm very excited about it. I want to thank you for allowing me to do this today. It was great. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
Sir, I'd like to thank you very much for taking the time to come and talk to us today.
Thank you.
This has been an AFN Pacific Special, a conversation with General Ray Odierno. I'm Sergeant Andrew Branstad, and thanks for watching.